Hi, Brett here from Nuggets Dungeon Terrain. Welcome to episode 159. In this episode, I've used some metal circles that I showed you at the end of the last episode to challenge myself and see how I could use that amount of space to create a variety of scatter terrain and traps. Here's what I came up with. So first up, this is not a direct encounter, but there's certainly something that lives at the bottom of this pit. And in a dungeon crawler, it's going to create some interesting strategies because it's bound to bottleneck or maybe block an entire passage. The tentacles have been made from a polymer clay, in particular the cheapest one I could possibly find. It's perfect for these because while it holds its form, it's also very springy and it doesn't mind getting pushed around a bit. This will protect it later on if it gets dropped, but it'll also make it easier to manipulate as I'm doing here. So in case it's not clear, this polymer clay has already been oven baked. It's still particularly flexible because it comes in a $2 packet. Here the party sees what looks like maybe the top of a chest, with dirt and small stones scattered over the top. As they get closer, the sides pop open, and a large structure comes out, unfolds and starts spinning. On the end are deadly blades. I made a small rectangular structure out of balsa wood, and then I popped on some small stones and lined the rest with a textured gel. The pieces I'm snipping off here to make the blades are leftovers from an expansion from Shadows of Brimstone. As the glue dries, I attach the piece to this clip. Normally this clip is used for photos, it hangs on a line of string, but here I use it to hang and allow objects to dry, especially once they've been painted. This cog is left over from a toy. It's the gears inside that make it move along. So I've nipped off the bottom and I'm going to use it as the base for the spinning trap. It conveniently has a shaft on the inside of the cog that allows me to slip this piece of lollipop stick straight over the top, making the stem of the trap. Off camera, I've attached a small jewellery piece and a skull to the top, and to the rods that contain the blades I've attached a right angled triangle to add extra support. Here's what it looks like when it's finished. A pool of acid is a pretty common thing in RPGs. To make the bottom of the pool, I actually cut out a large core of XPS foam and sliced it into different thicknesses. I'll be using some of that in some of the other projects as well. Then I've cut out the core, as you can see here, and attached that piece to the base. After the base coat, I watered down a large amount of bilious green paint and flooded the area. I then used some Mod Podge dimensional magic and poured that straight into the middle of the space. I was going to mix it in, but I liked the way that it was dispersing the paint and in a random chaotic way looked like two different kinds of chemicals were mixing together in the pit. To finish it off, I just painted the bubbles with mostly a bright yellow, and then when it dried, painted the whole thing with a gloss varnish. Using a similar idea, I wanted to make a pool of healing water. I want it to look quite magical, so instead of just trying to fill it with a clear liquid, I wanted it to be sparkling and glowing. To add to this magical effect, I decided to have on the flat carved rocks around the edge some different runes and maybe something in the middle that was marked as well. For the shimmering water effect, I use this extra cheap gel paint. This one's clear with a light coloured glitter in it. This first layer is a test and it's only about 3 or 4 mils deep. Once that was dry, on the next layer I added a gel paint that had a slightly more blue tinge to it. I topped the pool off with some clear Elmer's glue. I came up with the idea of a demon hole. This is an entry point for demons that live deep below to come up into the realm of mortals. As they pass up through, there's a kind of a rite of passage. There are thorns and barbs that line the pit and tear pieces of the demons off as they proceed. The pit ends up lined with parts of their flesh and skin as a tribute to their entry into this world, and definitely as a warning for others to not enter it. To the inside and the outside of this cylinder I added some rose thorns, some points off of toothpicks, and some of these hemispheres. I added a generous amount of hot glue to the inside, top and the outside of this piece, about 3 sticks worth. I tried to fill in all of the spaces where none of the other items were sitting, and also partially covered some of the domes and spikes as well. To make it look even more gross, I added the stringy effects that come from when you slowly pour some of this fabric glue from one point to another. It makes an almost immediate strand, kind of like a wet spider web, that you can manipulate very easily. What can I say? It's a treasure pile. It's a couple of bits covered in glitter. But I didn't have one this size, so why not? Okay, so a spiral staircase has definitely been done bigger and better. But I wanted to see if I can make one with this economy of space. It doesn't take up more than 4 spaces, but the characters can still use each of the slots and can gain a higher ground advantage if I'm doing a dungeon crawler. So I'm pretty happy how this one turned out. As a piece of scatter, it can be placed central to all of the characters that are on the board and can fire in all directions at once, challenging everybody at the same time. Once the foam ball had dried, I drew some channels to represent some different plates of metal, and then I burned some holes in which I would place some small grommets. Around the edge of each small grommet I put some tacky glue. Once the whole piece had been painted black and then silver, I washed over it using this old 10 bits paint with plenty of water in it. I then added a decent dose of rust effects, oranges and browns, and then brushed a silver over the top of that as well. Using a technique similar to the pool of acid and the pool of water, this time I kept the circle out of the middle and glued it back on to the bottom lip of the ring, making the ring a raised platform. Inside this I put some heavy gel, making sure that the tufts licked upwards off the end of the probe that I was using, so that later on I could paint it to look like fire. to make it look a little different, a little more magical, I added a brazier into the middle of the fire pit. The brazier is the end of a Christmas decoration. I simply pushed it into the middle and then made a space so that later I could glue it in. To make the flames in the brazier, I wet then strung out the end of a cotton bud. To this I then added some more gel. So here's another look at all of the pieces, this time in the context of being inside a dungeon space and with some miniatures for scale. So thanks again for watching. I hope there's something there that might have inspired you. In the future I'm thinking of making a wall display that will involve these magnetic flat strips and the terrain that I just built. Hey, thanks for watching, and if you got anything out of the video, please be sure to hit the like button. In my next video you can catch my second go at a death trap dungeon. I'll see you then.